Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Florida International University's Kimberly Green um, Latin American and Caribbean Center's Sargassum podcast. And really glad to be back with you again this week. Um, Francisco, what have you been doing? Anything interesting or worth sharing lately?
Um, I'm currently in Florida, so that's I guess the most interesting thing I did last week is that I came over to Florida for some birthday celebrations, and next week I'm gonna go to St. Eustatius for a board meeting. And on the way, I actually gonna meet Mark, our guest today, in person next Saturday. So I'm really excited. Robbie, we got an email from Jenna why she can't be here. Do you want to tell us
I
why?
saw that, and apparently there's a log across the road up there in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California, and it looks like she's not going to be out for a while. They've got somebody coming to move it, but apparently they don't have a chainsaw and all, and so it might be a while. So she's not going to be joining us this morning. It's just going to be me and you, and of course Mark and all. But we're gonna make it work. She's a difficult one to
Wow,
replace,
that's
but we'll
crazy.
we'll we'll work it out somehow.
But I've heard she's there with her family, so I hope she gets some extra quality family time in,
Well, that could
and
go
it's
either way,
actually
you know.
positive in the end. Oh, I'm sure her family is lovely. She's such a great
Oh, she
person.
is indeed. She is indeed,
um,
and she's got a
yeah.
nice dog too.
So let me introduce our. She's got a livestock, yes. Let me introduce our guest we have today. Our guest today is one of our Patreons, and his name is Mark Yokoyama. He's a naturalist, author, and wildlife educator, and he lives in St. Martin. And he has published many books about the nature and culture of St. Martin. He's also the co founder and treasurer of the nonprofit association Les Fruits de Mer. Their core mission is to collect and share knowledge about local nature and heritage. They run a museum called Amuseum Naturalis, which is a free museum on nature, heritage, and culture in St. Martin. They distribute free books about local subjects to students and schools on the island. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
And well, Mark, you're familiar with the podcast, and all being one of our cool people to help support what we're doing, and we appreciate that. So you're kind of familiar with this first question we're going to ask you without any explanation, and I'd like for you to tell us what sargassum is to you.
Sure. So to me, sargassum is like it's a manifestation of like all these invisible forces. So like people were sitting here on the beach for the last like 5,000 years, and then all of a sudden one day there's like 1,000 tons of goop washes up, and then it's just the new way things are. But like behind that is all the air pressure and the currents and dissolved nutrients and all this stuff. So it's like when you I don't know, when you make the monster, out of like the sorcery kind of. But then it's also like all the different things. The more you get into it, the more stuff you see, the deeper you go. So that's I don't know. That's what it is to me, I guess.
That's a really cool explanation. And yeah, there's a lot behind sargassum that makes it come to our beaches, and we're still trying to figure it all out. You are actually the first person from St. Martin that we interview. So, can you tell us a bit about how sargassum impacts your island?
Sure. I mean, I think it's quite similar to other islands. Like especially on the eastern side, you can have a lot of accumulations of sargassum. We have a lot of different ponds and salt ponds. So we also have sargassum that can get into some of those and into some of the mangrove wetlands. And then, I think that like we've seen, and I don't know if we know for sure, but we've seen blooms of other algae that could be related to some of these nutrients, like sort of the filamentous algae, like the chaetomorpha and stuff like that. which I don't know, maybe it's related. And then I would say another interesting thing here is that you have for the it's been dry here, like, or a drought every year since like 2014. So a lot of the ponds that are not connected to the sea all the time dry out completely. So you can see a lot of the birds that you would normally find there, like like a snowy egret or a black-necked stilt, will go to the beach now and feed and forage like in the sargassum. So that's kind of interesting. And then I would say that, like, obviously it impacts the people that live in those areas because it's the smell and whatever, and maybe even worse health problems. And then obviously there's a lot of tourism on some of these beaches, so there's an economic impact to that too.
Interesting.
So it seems like it may be positive for those birds, but maybe not that much for the people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like, if you think about the impact of climate change a little bit, is that, like, you have climate change causing drier weather in the Northeast Caribbean, so it's taking away, but then maybe climate change is at the root behind the sargassum. So it's like, yeah, it's an interesting, sort of like balancing of two bad things, kind of. I don't know, yeah.
Okay. St. Martin is an island that's really it's split in two. It's got the French section and the Dutch part. Um, is there any dynamics going on there about management issues between these two separate places?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that, like, I'm not involved in the management of it, but like everything, there's separate things going on, right? Because they're not going to be fully coordinated. It's not like they're going to send a tractor from across the island, you know. Um, so I think that there are separate, you know, efforts on both sides of the island to do management. And then, but I think the other thing is probably that on both sides of the island, you have a local government, but then in this, it sort of has this, like, I don't know what you call it, post-colonial relationship with a European government. So there's things, for example, that are managed at the local level, like maybe clearing a certain bay so that boats can use the dock there. But then there's also stuff that's being managed from France or from the Netherlands, which might be part of a regional thing where they're like, we're going to plan to put some nets here or whatever it is. So there has to be coordination between the local and sort of like the national or kingdom government. And then I would say also there's, like, businesses are doing stuff on their own. And there's also, especially now in the last year or two, citizen groups too. So there's like maybe like there's a bunch of different actors, I guess, that are all kind of advocating and doing stuff. So I guess it probably has to be a lot of coordination between all of this.
Very nice.
Yeah, that sounds like you definitely need a lot of coordination, but it sounds good that you have a lot of different groups doing stuff rather than a lot of different groups not doing anything. So that seems positive to me at least. So Mark, you just published a book. It's called Suddenly Sargassum, and for anybody who wants it, we got links below for both a PDF that you can download and for buying it off Amazon, where it's available. And this is about sargassum on St. Martin. And really big focus of the book is to introduce the readers to the animals that use sargassum, both in the water and on the beach. And you have really, really awesome photographs of these animals, and I'm impressed. Also, the really nice photographs you have made with drones of the sargassum mats, and it definitely shows that you have your expertise as a naturalist making this book. So how much time does it take to put something like this together? How many hours did you spend looking through sargassum to make all the observations and the pictures you put in there?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, like, I started documenting sargassum like in 2011. So even going all the way back to like the first time it came, like I think in one of the first like New York Times articles about it, they used some of the pictures I had taken from St. Martin. So like I'd been kind of documenting it for a long time, and then we have this project that is it ended up being funded by Temium, which is Terre et Mer Ultramarin. So it's like overseas land and sea, and it's part of the OFB, the Office Français de Biodiversité, so the French Office of Biodiversity. So they funded this project, and then so at that point we started really focusing on getting all the stuff we needed for the book, whether it's like the images and the research and stuff like that. So that part was really, I would say, about a year. But it was helped because we already, you know, had some knowledge and had some stuff. But yeah, and it was like, a lot of fun to go out and, you know, go poking through everything, or like, sit and watch the birds, or like check out all the different spots. But yeah, so I would say, it's about a year. Maybe it was like a couple 100 hours of work, but I guess like some of it is pretty, you know, is listening to this podcast work. I don't know, like hopefully not too much though. Like, is being on the beach work? Not really, you know. Like bending over the microscope, I feel like that after a couple hours gives you a real backache. But other than that, it's pretty fun stuff.
I agree with everything you just said about work. and so what are your plans for the book exactly?
Well, we have through the grant funding, we made about 500 copies of the book, and that also funded creating an exhibit for our museum. So it's like part of the book content done in sort of these large format panels that people can see when they visit. So we'll do a book launch. We're going to give this to teachers and students and libraries and stakeholders. And then we also do a program that we've been working on where we have books of different subjects, local subjects, and all different grade levels and sort of reading levels, that we give out to schools here. So it'll be also part of that program, because I think it's a good way to learn about science and ecology and climate and all these different things. So it's not, I mean, it's about sargassum, obviously, and it's a thing that people are curious about, but it's a good way to introduce a lot of other ideas and topics. So it'll be part of that. And like we gave away like 6,000 books last year. And someday we want to give a book to every student every year they're in school on the island, which is, I think, about 20,000 kids. So it's not that crazy. So this will be, available as part of that. So we can go to teachers and whatever. We also did a bunch of line art to do either like a coloring or activity book related to sargassum. So maybe we'll do that like next year. Um, but yeah, and I think that, it'll just be a tool that teachers can use and the kids can use to learn about the sargassum, but then also they're going to learn about birds, and they're going to learn about marine ecosystem, and they're going to learn about insects and that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's the plan, is just to like get the info out there and get kids interested in science, and um, give kids a chance to learn about their own island also, because the education systems here do not really focus on this island, because the curriculum is coming from elsewhere, and often usually the teachers are coming from elsewhere. So there's a whole dynamic where the kids are not getting local learning, and so we're trying to help fill that gap a little bit. And especially on the French side, it's also like most of people here speak English. It's like one of the only French territories that's primarily Anglophone. So the book we've done in English and French, so then it's also accessible to kids and people, to all the, as many people as it can be, you know, which is an important thing that is often kind of overlooked here in general, is that like, a lot of people aren't really good at, at French, because they're not, because this island has spoken English for the last 400 years,
So the official language in the schools is English.
No, the official language in the schools on the French side is French, but like
Oh.
in the town where we have our museum, they did a survey of the middle school. 85% of the kids were primarily English speakers, and like 10% were primarily Spanish speakers, and then 5% spoke either Creole or French. So like, but then the teachers oftentimes are the only person in the class who doesn't know how to speak English, which I think is a fundamental problem with the education system here. Which is one reason why like we're really focused on providing bilingual and even multilingual beyond that. I mean, if we can include Spanish and some stuff, we do that as well. Um, but I think it's so problematic because how do you really you're struggling to learn French and learn other stuff, and then also maybe you speak English well, but you don't ever learn to read English, you know,
Or to write
because
it.
you're only learning French in school, and so like it's and like they're making steps towards more bilingualism in the schools and stuff like that, but it's not an overnight. It's it's a big process, when you haven't been doing it all along. So yeah, so it's like kind of this crazy thing. Um, so in a way, also having any resources that are available in both languages, I think, is really pretty valuable too. And we actually made a third version of the book that's both put together. That's specifically to be able to give to schools.
I believe that what you were saying with the education system is a lot of stuff that I see in a lot of education systems in the region, but I don't quite see it from your view. What I hear parents saying about the curriculum is they didn't make this for us; they made it for somebody else and just gave it to us. And it sounds like you're saying the same thing's going on there. And maybe you and I should talk about getting some of this contextual science curriculum we got over there, and maybe that's something that you folks could use, and you and I could have a conversation about that sometime, and see what we can do, because everybody should have lessons in science they can understand. You know, um, we teach about zebras and giraffes and stuff like that, but that's a Western luxury. We need. I had a mosquito man say, "Yeah, they need. Why do they teach us about those things? They need to teach my children about the wasitara, daño. We don't need to know about those things over there. And those things are fun to learn about, but you need to learn about where you live first and all. And yeah. Anyway, sorry about that. That's my little tangent that I get off on.
No,
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
be sorry. That's. Go ahead, Mark.
oh, I was just saying, yeah, 100% agree. I mean, that's literally the reason why our association exists is basically to create local learning tools that reflect the local nature and culture and all that, and that also are accessible in the languages that people actually use. Which seems obvious, but there's not. No one else is really focused on that.
Sounds like he's describing our project.
Well, I think your guys' projects are very similar
We're
in
like
some ways.
separated at birth.
Yeah. And also, yeah. So, what else? ¿Qué más?
I got a last question for Mark, and I want you to tell us a bit more about your job. You say you're a naturalist, author, and wildlife educator. So I'm sure a lot of young people dream of one of those jobs or a combination of it. So can you tell us a bit what a week or a day in your life looks like in your job?
Sure. I mean, and I'll clarify that like for the association and for doing all this stuff is basically volunteer stuff for me. So like it's separate from earning money, although I do spend most of my time on this stuff, which I'm just lucky to be able to do that. But yeah, so like I mean on the average day or week, like we have the museum, which is like sort of like it's everything is basically outside, and so like I'll go and be there at least for part of the day every day to do the garden. We raise seedlings of like native trees that we give away, so I have to do some stuff there. At least a few times a week I'll try to get out and document some nature, whether it's like looking at the, photographing the plants in some place, or working on the sargassum book in the field, or blacklighting to see what bugs come at night. So yeah, maybe like 3 or 4 times a week I'll spend a couple hours doing that. um, we do, I guess another thing we do a lot more of lately is also sort of cultural and oral history work. So I would say on average, probably once a week, I will go interview someone about something. And like mostly it's an older generation, about things that were really happening before the big sort of shift into tourism. So like, I'm helping someone with a book about all the homemade games and toys and traps and ovens and stuff that people made in the 40s and 50s. So involves like talking to people about their childhood and like this kind of thing. um and then I guess I spend a lot of time in front of the computer, like going through the photos and doing research, and like some of that stuff is pretty interesting. And then there's also, I guess, I have to ask people for money, and like, write up a proposal to get a grant, or write up a report about what we did, or figure out how many kids are in each school so that we have the right number of books to give them, or whatever. So there's administrative stuff like that too. But it's a pretty good mix. And like for the most part, like I love all of that stuff. Like, obviously, especially going out and like seeing what's there, um like I've loved that ever since I was a kid. So like, and then I think maybe now as I've gotten older, like the sharing of it with other people, I think has become also like kind of a rewarding and fun thing. So when we have school classes visit the museum, then I'm with those kids, and I lead them on activities. Like we go in the backyard and find all the different things that birds are using in their habitat as like a scavenger hunt, and different stuff like this. So like, yeah, that's kind of, it's a mix of stuff, and it's almost all really awesome stuff, and it's very lucky to have the chance to do it.
Well, excellent, Mark. We really appreciate you being with us today, and all, and thanks for sharing with us. We'll when you do the book release or whatever it is, let us know about it. We'll put some stuff out on our social media platforms to share when that's coming up. And we really appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for your time today.
Awesome, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time, and it was so nice talking to you about your project.
Yeah, see you soon.
Yes, next Saturday.
Excellent.
So, Robbie, what did you think about Mark's
That
project?
was pleasant, man. I think what he's doing is really nice, and all. And I think it might, maybe he and I could, work out something, that our work could complement his work, and all. That sounds exciting to me. But it sounds like he understands the difference between work and play, and he tried to make sure that he never uses that four-letter word work and all, and he's accomplishing a lot in doing so, and I really appreciate that. How about you?
Yes, they have a lot of cool books, and when I looked through the book, what I loved was all those pictures of the little animals living in the sargassum. So I can imagine, especially younger kids, getting really excited about sargassum. And it does talk about the negative effects of sargassum as well, but it does get that wonder out of what is living in there, which a lot of people don't have, who just see the sargassum as something negative. So that's what I really appreciate about the book. And then today, I think the most surprising thing I heard was that they have most people speaking English at home or in the streets, but then at the school they learn French. So I didn't know about this difference in St. Martin. It makes sense because it's an island with two nations, and the other nation is Dutch, and I guess also there they mostly speak English, as they do in the neighboring islands as well, where English is mostly spoken. But so it's practical to speak English and not French in order to communicate within the island. but at the same time, they have to learn French at school, and it seems to be maybe a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's kind of dynamics are going on in a lot of places and all, and and I myself I agree with that. I had no idea what was going on there, and yeah, and with the English as a home language, and there's a different language in the education system. It just sounds just like, another place that's turned the education system is turned upside down. So yeah, I was happy to learn about that. I mean, sad, but I'm at least aware of it. Something new now that I wasn't aware of 15 minutes ago. Well, everybody, thank you for being with us today again here at the Sargassum Podcast, and thank you for learning with us and all. And for me personally, and I think for Francisca as well, we all like it when we learn together and all. And we want to give a big up to our sponsor, the Florida International University's Kimberly Green Latin American and Caribbean Center, and they're real good friends of us, and they're just totally awesome. And all you ought to check them out. Go to school there and all. And with that, we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Yes, see you next time, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in today and learning with us from our guests. If you want more information about what our guests talked about today, check our show notes for links and information in our archive. And don't forget to like and share our podcast with your friends.
If you enjoy our podcast, please consider supporting us financially by becoming a Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can support us and get the exclusive benefit of submitting your questions for our interviewees before the interview.
The Sargassum Podcast is produced by Marine Conservation Without Borders and is made possible with financial support and consideration from the Kimberly Green Latin America and Caribbean Center, U.S. Department of Education Title VI grant. It is produced by Jose Martinez, Alex Danieli, Cleo Maridakis, Francisca Elmer, and Alois Lopez, and is hosted by Robbie Thigpen, Francisca Elmer, Jenna Cantuccio, Florence Benez, Cleo Maridakis, and Paula Diaz.
We will be back in 2 weeks with another exciting guest. The music for the podcast is from the song Them I Pray by Drizzle, the Round Drama, an artist from Rotterdam. Follow him on Spotify and on YouTube for more music. But for now, this is the full song Them I Pray.